Okay, this video is about looms, and I'll start with showing you, well, I've given you each, or you've each purchased a loom like this, which is just an inexpensive pinwheel, either from Fabricland or from a dollar store, and it's definitely a workaround, but if you're not committed to Teneriffe lace, it's certainly a good way to try it. This is what it looks like when it has it has been warped and some of the weaving has started. That's a smaller one, but it's the same idea. And then there's a whole class of looms that have holes. Unlike the pinwheels where you put the warp of the loom right around the pin, there are a number of looms out there that are, just show you here, that are pre-drilled. And so for those looms, you have to take an extra step and put this wrapping around the outer edge of where you want to weave, which I will of course show you how to do. This one has really big holes, several that I made myself with the help, I might add, of a woodworker. I used a much finer drill to make much finer holes. This one was a piece of wood that I found at Michael's. It was already in this nice oval shape, and I just drilled the holes around the edge and then started weaving. It's another homemade loom. It's round, and the holes are round, but it doesn't have to be. And then there are square and round looms that have holes in them. Here's an example of a square one. The corners are a little, oops, sorry. This is the right side. The corners are a little further apart, but not enough to be a problem. It comes in a set of 3 different sizes. Can you read that? There we go. And the information for that is in your resource list. There. What else? These are looms made by Gina B, or available from Gina B Silkworks. That's a heart-shaped one, as well as a round one. She has quite a few. They actually normally come with a handle that comes out about here. But I find the handle very irritating. My thread always seems to be getting caught on it, so my woodworking friend whacked it off for me, and we just sanded what was left. And I found the frames much easier to use without the handles, but she does sell them with the handles. And they're usable with the handles. They're just better without, as far as I'm concerned, but that's a personal preference. Gina B Silkworks also makes square looms. Here's an example of a square one. She calls these Filet Lace Looms. For sewers, you might want to make a small cushion, and there is a pattern in your resource list. You'll find a pattern for how to make one of these. And this pattern of where to put the threads, where to put the pins, because these are pins here that you would put your threads around to make the warp. There's an online website that will generate this kind of diagram for you with a different, your choice of how many rows going out and how many spokes in the circle. So I find that very useful. There's a commercially available, well, it's on Etsy, there's an available equivalent where the vendor makes the little cards for you, and you can just pin down different cards onto it. This is her cushion. Further afield, just as a blast from the past, in Japan, they used to make what they called a capo cushion, which is the Teneriffe lace cushion, and it looks like this. I only have this thanks to a friend from Japan who ordered it for me, because she ordered it secondhand, because I of course, didn't speak any Japanese or read any Japanese. It's hard compared to these soft homemade cushions. But it works very well. I like using it. And again, you put pins in, and there are different, it's maybe getting a little worn away, but there are different rows and shapes that you can make that are pre-drilled onto the cushion. Sometimes you can get looms in other shapes. This is from Dewberry Ridge, and you'll find Dewberry Ridge on your resource list. There are some looms that have teeth instead of pins, but it works the same way as pins. You just loop your yarn, let me move that forward a bit. You loop your yarn around the teeth instead of around a pin. This one is also from Gina B Silkworks. And then things I've tried that didn't work so well, I tried using this radially patterned, it's called a canvas shape, plastic canvas shape. And I found it just way too bendy. The stress that the threads put on it just bent it up. And I tried using 2 layers, but it was just too soft. It also comes in a square, and there are some square patterns. So what you could potentially do is pin this onto, well, maybe the round one. Pin this onto a cushion that you make yourself. And you could snip this off to the size you wanted and pin it onto the cushion, and then you would have marks to help yourself figure out where the next row of weaving should go. And other things I found again at Michael's, I found these small wooden discs. They're ready for drilling, so if you have somebody with a drill press, you wouldn't have to do any of the cutting out of the wood, you could just drill. And 2 other ideas. I did wonder whether one could use a Kumihimo disc. I haven't tried it myself. Sorry, that's crooked iced tea. I haven't tried it myself, but it is a high density foam, and you could put the pins on the outer edge at whatever spacing you wanted. I mean, you could use the pre-existing spacing, but you don't have to. So that's a possibility. And you may already have one of those. And I even took the lid off of a plastic lid off of a large jar. Took the drill again, poked the holes, and then just warped the web. So use your imagination, and you may find you already have something you prefer to the pinwheel to use at home, or that you can get easily and transform easily. Okay. I think that's it for the loom. I just want to say a quick word about thread. I did ask you to provide Pearl 8. I usually use an inexpensive, plain thread. It doesn't have to be pearl cotton. It could be not embroidery floss. I think that's probably a little weak, but something, it could be a nylon thread, or it could be a polyester thread, or just a thin pearl cotton that you don't care about much. Doesn't matter what color. And I just use that for this, doing this outer edge warping. And then otherwise, I think certainly to start with, it's nice to use a Pearl 8 because the spaces fill in a little more quickly when you're doing, when you're trying to fill in a space. If you're using a very, very fine thread, then you have to do a lot of rows. Whereas if you're using a slightly thicker, more fluffy thread like the pearl thread, it will fill in a little more quickly. Okay, that's that. So the next video will be about how to add the preparation edge on a loom that has holes in it. If you don't have a loom that has holes, for example, your pinwheel loom, then we'll move right into how to warp the loom. In other words, how to add those radiating threads.